Chanakya, are we good to start?
Yes, Ronak, I think we are good to start.
Cool. Okay. So I think we will commence.
Right, definitely.
Perfect. Okay. A very good morning to everybody. Thank you for attending the session over here on modern workplace. Today we are going to talk about the adoption of modernization in our day-to-day IT landscape and what kind of technologies on the Microsoft Cloud platform can help us implement all of these efficiently and use those features to give a unified experience to our end users. At the same time, make sure that all my corporate data and information is completely secured, and to make sure that we are complying by the necessary standards of the region where the end customer will exist, or abiding by the typical data placement within the geography for the end customer. Modernization of workplace, guys, it did begin in the latter half of 2019 with the enterprise mobility and security gearing up across all the regions, typically even in the Gulf, thanks to the Microsoft data centers that have now been hosted in our region, and the kind of services that they are providing. But the I would say the all of a sudden change or the leap that 2020 forced us to take in our IT infrastructure was something that was never expected. We did expect modernization of workplace to impact the way we work, the way we utilize the technology in our day-to-day activities, but it was not expected to have such a drastic change, that too so soon. Thanks to the pandemic, wherein every user or every organization has tried to change the way they interact with their resources, the way a user works from home, or the way a user would want to have the experience of accessing the corporate resources from home, the way they access the same in their organization, maybe within the premise. Keeping all of this in mind, the the challenge that any organization would face from an IT infrastructure or environment perspective is a pretty complex one, because a user has a different level of expectation altogether. So when I say a user has a different level of expectations, what I mean over here is a user would want to have applications accessed as seamlessly as they can, and access the resources from anywhere and everywhere across any type of device, and at the same time share the same with the co-workers. Providing a user an experience as good as a corporate environment in premise, the organization also has to consider a lot of protocols that need to be followed from the security standpoint, from compliance, from governance, from data breach, vulnerability, and a lot more. So, to understand the aspect of modernization of workplace, where suddenly in a year's time we have all started working from home, we have all started accessing the corporate resources from where we are, we have all operating system platforms now supported across this modern workplace. We have divided the security landscape into three major verticals. One would be an identity. So when I use the term identity over here, what I'm typically considering is a user. Now the user, maybe someone who's belonging to my organization, or a user may be a contractor, he might be an auditor, an external guest user in my organization. Many, like there are different types of objects that we can consider. So, first of all, when I consider the security landscape, I need to make sure that we are well categorizing the identities and defining as to who should be having the access and who should not be having the access. Moving further, we go to the different types of devices that are permitted. So maybe I am permitting Windows and Mac, I'm permitting Windows and iOS, maybe I'm not permitting any tablets, or I'm not permitting Androids, or maybe I'm permitting Androids and not allowing iOS. A lot of policies, a lot of settings that I would want to define, basis which I will grant the users an access to various applications that are hosted, maybe within my on-premise, or maybe over the cloud, or maybe on some third-party cloud solution. And when I wish to achieve all of these in a modern workplace, when I wish to achieve all of these in my IT infrastructure to allow users to work from anywhere, it is the enterprise mobility and security which comes into the picture. But and that is something which is required because till date, users definitely were accessing the resources from anywhere, but not as much as it is now. So, what I mean over here is earlier, the scenario that we used to work in was, I would say, a ratio of maybe 80-20 or 70-30, where 70 or 80% of my workforce is on premise connected to my environment locally, and I have 20 to 30% of the task force who are working from an untrusted, or maybe I would say from an external location. Now, the thing is altogether inverse, as I said again, from 2020, where I have majority of my task force working from anywhere that they are. And, I have some only of the employees who are working from typically in the office or on premise. And keeping all of this in mind, it is the Microsoft Enterprise Mobility and Security Suite that is going to satisfy this requirement. So today, when I say modernization of my workplace, it is a really, really big landscape because it has got a lot of things that will come into the picture. Starting with the identity and access management, when I say again the modernization of workplace, it is not just limited to a username and password accessing over an LTAP protocol, or a native Active Directory. I have applications based on n number of underlying runtimes. I have different operating system platforms. I have different methods of authentication beyond Kerberos as well. And apart from those other authentication methods, we adopt features like modern authentication, which helps the users go passwordless, making their access more secure using multi-factor authentication or seamless sign-on and pass-through authentication, and a lot of other aspects which we need to consider. Secondly, considering that the user is going to work from anywhere, we have to implement a completely aggressive solution which is going to do behavior analysis on the user, in terms of where the user is accessing the applications from, or where the user is trying to store the data, or maybe what type of an operating system it is, what type of a device it is, and a lot more that I would want to know in terms of insights from the user's behavior. I will definitely require device and application management and compliance to be put in place, because I am permitting the user maybe to access the resources from where they are, but I don't know about the security. So maybe that is going to be something which needs to be implemented primarily before even allowing the users to access those resources over the internet outside the organization. And lastly, I would want to do some kind of an encryption on my data in terms of information protection, not allowing users to circulate a sensitive data, not allowing the users to share some typical types of files, or typically we call this as information rights management. And then I probably might require a complete dashboard, which is going to give me an insight of every single activity or service that is going to be accessed in my environment, which will be provided by the cloud and SaaS application security. Now, every aspect that I'm mentioning over here is something that uh, we have our uh, Microsoft Enterprise Mobility and Security suite providing. So may that be identity and access management, may that be user entity and behavior analytics, or may that be device and application management, encryption, or an insight dashboard. All of this is completely a part of your enterprise mobility and security suite. This allows us to overcome a huge, I would say, gap between, I mean, it helps us to bridge the gap between the user expectations and the challenges that we face today in our IT infrastructure. So maybe my user wants to work from any type of a device. Maybe I want them to access all the familiar office applications, and they want to, share and collaborate their data with all the co-colleagues or the team members whom they work with or the customers whom they work with. At the same time, I would want to secure my data. I would want to protect my information, resources, and assets. And I would want to restrict the user maybe to do it only from a single device, or maybe one laptop and maybe another mobile device. So giving the user the complete leverage to do every single thing that they're expecting, but at the same time putting them under a complete security and compliance that we need to put in place. To do this, it is a good option that Microsoft Enterprise Mobility and Security Suite gives. So depending upon an end customer's requirement, you can typically select the flavor of enterprise mobility that you would want to implement. So there are typically going to be 4 different milestones that a customer would wish to achieve, basis which they can select the definite product that they want to implement. So it is not necessary that to modernize your workplace, you need the complete suite. You might want to have some of the features and you might not wish to have some features. So the products of the EMS suite have been bundled in a way that it will satisfy the needs of a small office or a medium enterprise, right up till a large enterprise. May that be a private sector organization, may that be a public sector organization, may that be a government organization, or may that be an organization with any type of a business nature. So while we talk about all of these, again, to consolidate at a next level, we have users who are our identity. So we say who, devices is where, and applications and data is what the user is trying to access. And then the whole lot of it is something that we will be managing from a little dashboard that the M365 suite will give us to perform every single activity, alerting, remediation, configuration management, whatever I might think of in case of a user working remotely. It provides us features like conditional access. Conditional access are, in a layman's language, some if then else statements that we configure, some if then else conditions which are given so that in case the user is trying to access a particular device or application, he needs to meet a certain level of policies, settings, and compliance requirements. If the requirements are not met, the user doesn't get the access, something like this. And if at all the requirements are completely met, the identity and the policies will be validated, and the user will then be granted an access to those resources. When we further talk about mobile application management, we definitely have users, maybe sometimes trying to play around with the sensitive corporate information. In that case, we can implement app protection using mobile app management, wherein For an illustration, I am sending you an Excel sheet which is comprising of all the information which is business sensitive, and I would definitely not want you to share it or access it for any unauthorized purpose. In that case, probably the user might try to copy the Excel and paste it on the mobile device or maybe in the memory card or on the local storage of his own device, which is typically not going to be permitted. In a scenario where the user will then copy the content from the sheet, save it into a Word file, and try to save that Word file on a personal device, that too is something which will be blocked, and the user will only be allowed to save the information in a corporate managed application or a permitted sanctioned application. What all of these means here is it not only looks at the status of the file, or it merely does not look at the file that is being shared over the email, but it also gets into the content of the file to encrypt it and make sure that it is not leaked by any chance, come what may, or come that may be on any type of a device or on any type of an operating system. We have identity driven security. As I told you, we today are looking to make our users go passwordless, wherein maybe you don't need to enter your username and password all the time. You have facilities of single sign on, wherein while trying to log in for the first time, you will be having a pop-up coming on your mobile device wherein you accept the approval notification or maybe enter the verification code, and once you do that, you're more than good to go. And this is implemented with behavior analysis in the backend. This behavior analysis is deeply integrated with Microsoft's own machine learning solutions, which makes it really impossible for users to bypass those levels of security or do any malicious, activity inside my environment which they are accessing. So going passwordless with different types of options that you have, and the most interesting part over here is that to make sure that this solution meets the requirement of the end customer, you simply don't have one single option, you have many. You have a complete suite, I would say, which is going to facilitate every single aspect that the end customer is looking for depending upon the nature of business. There is an extremely good level of Microsoft security model, which is a part of the EMS suite, as we call it, the enterprise mobility plus the security. So the security that we have is typically distributed across three different flavors. One of them is the Office 365 Advanced Threat Protection Services, which works at the application layer where I have my Office 365 applications, my SharePoint data, my Teams, and all of it implemented. I have Azure Advanced Threat Protection Services, which typically looks for the user's behavior, which looks for the lateral movements that are being done by the information shared by the user, and then basis which it allows you to protect the identity at your infrastructure level. And then you have the most versatile Windows Defender Advanced Threat Protection, or the today's Endpoint Protection Manager, which helps you to protect the endpoints, may that be Androids, iOS, macOS, laptops, desktops, iPads, tablets, anything. So that is typically the endpoint protection. So if you carefully try to evaluate how you can control and secure your modern workplace, I would say you have a typical blend of three different services. That is your Office 365 at the application and the data layer. You have a Windows Defender at the endpoint layer, and then you have the Azure ATP at your identity and the infrastructure layer. These three components together make a complete advanced threat protection suite and services that are being offered as a part of your EMS. You have Microsoft Cloud Application Security. This is typically one of my favorites because this has got some limitless features. It does not, I mean, at the first, it does not only limit the offering to the Microsoft Cloud solution, but it also takes it further to AWS, to G Suite, to box storages, to other third party applications, to your on prem SIM solutions, connecting with them, to your on prem security solutions, and a lot more. So this is typically one of the most complex, but the most required and the most identified and observed product that an organization would want to adopt in case they are planning to implement an enterprise level of security. So keeping all of this in mind, you have features for modern workplace, you have features to secure your environment, you have features to identify the anomalies, to trace them, create policies, remediate them, and a lot more, not only within your Microsoft infrastructure, but also extending its capacities to third party cloud solution providers or to third party services, which might be a requirement of your business. Now, typically speaking, this particular solution of enterprise mobility and security, if you might have observed in the previous decks, is something that moves around the applications which are hosted as SaaS, that is, software as a service. It is for users trying to access everything in the cloud. It is for users trying to manage all of it through the cloud and from the cloud. Now, there might be scenarios where maybe the organization has not implemented a cloud solution and they have complete on-premise services inside their environment. And in spite of having the on-premise services, they still want to use the security solutions that are provided by the cloud. They still want to facilitate the users to access their resources and their services from on-premise but over the cloud. They want to have the mobile device and application management done from the cloud for the on-premise devices or for the on-premise resources, and allow the users to be as productive as they can while accessing their resources remotely from on-premise through the cloud. This is also achieved using your enterprise mobility and security suite with one of the most stable solutions that we have seen organizations implementing through the 2019 pandemic, and that is your Windows Virtual Desktop. In the early days, Microsoft did collaborate with Citrix to make these offerings over the Microsoft Azure Cloud Platform. Over a period of time, these offerings were then incorporated in Microsoft's own suite by enhancing the native remote desktop services that we had in our Windows Server operating systems. WVD changed actually the way you would want to, access your resources which are lying on premise. So to give you a simple heads up, it's like all your applications are installed on premise, all your servers, all your infrastructure is lying on premise. You simply establish a connectivity of your on-prem environment with the cloud, implement a Windows virtual desktop solution, and let the users access the WVD and through the WVD your on-prem resources. Now, when I give this kind of a facility, imagine how amazing it is for an end user to work. So if today I'm working on maybe an i3 compute with a 4 gigs of RAM using a WVD session, which is a mere RDP that I might be doing, I can have a compute of as high as a 128 gigs of RAM or 256 gigs of RAM, depending upon a memory intensive compute that I might look for, or depending upon a complete graphic intensive compute that I might be looking for. Another exciting part of WVD is that you can control the entire cloud environment from your on-prem group policies. You don't need to have anything additional placed over there. You can have these WVD components which are a member of your on-premise domain, and every single thing that is mapped on an end user's computer inside your organization will exactly be mapped on your WVD. So it's like I'm sitting home, I'm accessing my on-prem services which are lying somewhere in some part of the world of my organization, and it is lying in some data center. I'm accessing it through WVD. I am completely secured. I work, and the moment I close my session, all the information is securely saved inside the session, and the user has moved out of it without compromising or without trying to copy or have those data or sensitive information taken on his personal device. Not only that much, since this is an offering inside your Microsoft Cloud Platform, I would say again, this is something which you implement together with your Microsoft Azure and M365 as and when you require it to have. Now, when you have this particular solution implemented, if you don't want it to be controlled using group policies, it is as easy as an end user device to control it using your M365 mobility suite as well. Meaning, just try to understand that you have a Windows 10 system coming to you as an RDP, which is either controlled by your group policy or by your Microsoft device management services, or using a hybrid mode of both of them to give you a second level of security altogether, and still not compromising your experience of having an access to the corporate data or resources. And when you do all of these, every single information is still tracked in your Microsoft Cloud Application Security Broker, and the administrator is notified about every single event that is being occurring over there, depending upon the way you configure it. This is highly scalable. You can scale it up as per your requirement, and you can bring it down in minutes as per your requirement. So again, it still gives you the fundamental of a consumption based model active in the WVD environment as well, right? And over here, for the first time, Microsoft has brought a client operating system, I would say, which is a mediator between your Windows servers and your Windows 10 operating system. Why so? Because if we carefully try to just go back in the native offerings that Windows Server, RD session host had, we had multiple options like having a multi-session RDP taken, or having an Office Professional Plus implemented, or having the services running from that particular server operating system and accessed the same over accessing the same over a Windows 10 enterprise operating system. But all of this was limited to a single session on a Windows 10 enterprise. So for the first time, as I said, you have a Windows 10 multi-session enterprise operating system, which is a perfect combination of RDS as well as your Windows client operating system. And when you implement the multi-session Windows 10 Enterprise, you then create a complete collaboration using your M365 security features, using your Azure compliance features, and giving the access to the users using Windows Virtual Desktop and modern authentication as well. Over here, again, the good part is most of the customers are who are already on M365 are eligible to use WVD. So if you have an E3 E5 or an A3 A5 or a business premium version, you can still have WVD implemented using those licenses. If you have an on-prem RDS environment, you can use those licenses for WVD as well. And while we do all of these, it actually minimizes my cost like never before. The best part over here is that majority of the fundamentals of WVD are going to be Microsoft managed. So it's like the underlying environment, the front end web pages, or the type of services that are being offered will be completely managed by Microsoft. What you simply control is the operating system, the applications to be hosted over it, and the customizations to suit your requirement. That's it. Since WVD is accessible across any operating system platform, it has got some really good features like dynamic resolution, which help you to adjust the resolution based on your usage. So each time you try to toggle, I would say, the resolution of the windows, the settings are going to fit your windows accordingly. So typically speaking, if I am on an iPad, my resolution may be different. On an Android or on an iOS, my resolution will be different, and the same on a laptop as well. Another additional feature that we have is where I can help my WVD session use the physical hardware of my system, so that I can use the different types of ports and services that I have to get them engaged with WVD, and use it as if it's a local Windows 10 machine. The same thing for your audio video components as well. So if at all you are implementing a WVD solution, first thing first, you over here, you will not require an application of unified communication like Microsoft Teams to be installed locally on the end user's machine. It can directly work from over the cloud environment. It will be directly running from your WVD session, and the complete accessibility, latency, or the user experience would be something like this, wherein a user tries to have a audio video call over a WVD session. In that case, it will act something like this. So over here, we did see how and what kind of latency Teams would give over WVD, which is 1 or 2 milliseconds and completely acceptable, rather than having the hassle of installing that application locally on every end user's device. This is possible because Microsoft Azure is the only cloud provider with the largest global network and the largest fiber and subsea cables across the globe. I mean, across all the data centers, and giving the users the closest available CDN endpoint to access the services, and making sure that the latency is completely minimized. These are the features which we use or which we can implement in order to modernize the workplace to the best of what we can. And with all of these, we have a hell lot of identity and access management features that are also provided to transform your existing IT infrastructure. So you probably might have an on-prem environment where you have all your services and resources implemented. Now, using your Microsoft EMS suite, you can collaborate multiple such locations across one single platform, and then give the access to the users from one single device across all the types of applications or services that are hosted, may that be on premise or in the cloud. Bringing these kind of services inside the environment is something we call as the modernization of workplace completely, wherein you implement services like infrastructure as a code, you deploy things on platform as a service, and then you probably have every type of device connected using the AI and machine learning components, and connecting them over an IP enabled network, making your environment a completely IoT enabled environment. To our surprise, The entire modernization of workplace is controlled by a single identity provider called as Azure Active Directory, which gives you every possible feature to connect your cloud services with your on-prem services and with your other cloud providers as well. For example, in Azure Active Directory, I can have my users who are connecting from any kind of a device, trying to maybe log in using their Facebook or a Google account or any other cloud solution provider as well. So, all in all, this is going to become a new ecosystem of my resources within my enterprise, and the experience is going to be like never before. The identity management, so starting right from the native things that we used to do, is going to continuously change and improvise and let the user adopt to to a particular goal that is going passwordless completely with every single activity being logged in the cloud environment. To implement all of this, another good advantage is that I don't need my on-prem Active Directory all the time to be, directly synchronized to the cloud. Azure Active Directory gives you an option of disconnected Active Directory forests, meaning I can have a collaboration of multiple organizations. It's a merger done for multiple companies, and I can still have all of them synchronized to a single Azure Active Directory tenant, bringing all my identities in one place like never before. We have features like password protection, wherein I can allow, block, or ban some specific type of passwords which I don't want the user to use, or maybe which I want the user to enforce. And then post implementation of this, we can have users go completely passwordless, maybe using Windows Hello for Business or any two-factor authenticator app like your Microsoft MFA app, or some physical hardware security key, which is going to be required each time the user tries to access a corporate device or a corporate information from anywhere outside my organization. A completely versatile platform integrated with, I would say, deeply integrated with AI and machine learning in order to protect information from any type of user or device across any type of application or data, may that be cloud based or may that be a native infrastructure based. And while all of this is implemented, we have customized risk detection engines which are going to help us protect the information like never before. In this example, let's say I have a user who is trying to log into my Azure Active Directory. There will be real-time detections done to identify the public IP of that end user, to identify the device type or the operating system of the end user, and then basis which the user will be either granted or denied an access to the resources. You have offline detection services like a typical travel activity, or routing your data through multiple IP addresses or malicious blacklisted public IP addresses. And once you cross both these layers of security, only then you will have the access to your cloud applications. And while accessing the cloud applications also, the risk detection engine does not stop from building the activity logs of every single thing that you have been doing, and then finally warning the end user by dropping an email of what exactly has been traced from the activity that the user is performing. And this again is managed from a single dashboard, which is a user risk identification, detection, and remediation engine available as a part of your Azure Active Directory services. All in all, you have modernization of workplace with features like never before, with services and solutions way beyond what we have been doing on premise or what we used to do on premise. Having everything under one single umbrella from a single dashboard, monitored, managed, and controlled, the experience of the IT administration or the experience of the technical task force is also totally seamless, minimizing the management and giving the end users still the type of access that they had always been looking for. So this brings us, guys, to an end of a quick summary on modernization of workplace using Microsoft 365. We can now have a quick question and answer session to address any queries or anything that you would want to have a more insight on, and post that we would be concluding the session. I will be putting up our communication details in the chat window. You can feel free to connect with us for any query or any engagement where you think you need help from us regarding the modernization of workplace for the end user. Thank you very much for being a part of this. I hope it was an informative session for you. Let us have the question and answers. Fine. I guess, Chanakya, we are done with the questions. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a nice day. Thank you. Stay safe. Take care. Over to you, Chanakya.
Thank you so much, Ronak, for the lovely presentation. For any other further queries, kindly put in your queries in the Q&A tab. If not, then I think this is all from our end. Our sales team will soon get in touch with you all. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Signing off.